order and take a moment for a moment of silence, and then we'll do the pledges. Are you all ready to do pledges? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Are there any comments from the public? Any need for adjustments?
Nothing this month.
Ready to do the consent agenda? Are there any items that y'all want to pull out? Nothing. Okay. Can I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
From David, all in favor? We are flipping on. On the budget for the fiscal year 2023. Maureen, Jim, do you
I was
want
gonna
to
make
lead
a
that?
couple of opening comments, and I know we have some information from David and Fred that we can, we'll be discussing as well. Remember we presented a draft budget back in August and asked for comments, and then said we'd come back in September with something that we would put forth for approval. We've got revenue of about 12.8 million, expenses of about 12.5. We're showing a bottom line income of about 261,000. And kind of, if you look on the second page, you end the year at about average of about 3.5 months of expenses. As those of you that have been on the board a while know, we have been trying to get your reserves built back up. We have talked about a minimum reserve of 6 months and 6 to 12, depending, on the age of the district and the risk involved. So I think we said a minimum of 6 months is what we were recommending for your budget over the last year. So we're kind of working towards that. That's what we thought. With that, we'll open it up for discussion and comments. Again, I'm not.
Question for you, since you brought it up. When we spoke earlier, I guess it was last week, you indicated a 6-month reserve number came from Bear. And I just want, I guess, confirmation since that Adam's here. Is that true?
Yes,
And what did you base that on?
that's based on the market threshold. So the rating agencies prefer to see anywhere from 6 to 12 months of operating surplus.
But historically, how have we been running?
Historically, you've had traditionally around 6 to 12 months. With the exception of I believe the meter project was
Last couple of years, the meter project, and then when we implemented a 20% homestead exemption, that was an impact on the bottom line. So there's been the discussions that I recall is trying to get out of that hole, if you will, and get back to a more recommended level of reserves.
I'd like to present my proposal.
Absolutely.
I don't know if everybody has this packet here. It's was up front. If you don't have a copy, I have some extra copies. You have that? So, we've had a lot of increases this year with the water rates. And so, I kind of looked at the data provided and what we got from there. And then I I started, putting that into spreadsheets. And so what I want to discuss about is a proposal, a little 8.5 by 11 is, I call it the no new property tax revenue. So basically what this proposal is, it collects the same amount of revenue that we collected last year via taxes and not water rates. So the way you look at this, if you flip past the 8.5 by 11 sheet, when you go to the first sheet. So there's a form that we get from Baird, and it tends to have a blue banner on the top, and it basically lays out their calculation of the debt service account, their details. So what I've tried to do is I've replicated their sheet in this live Excel table. So this is their data. And really, I did this to demonstrate that if this Excel sheet works. And if you look at their sheet, they come up with a ending fund balance down here on row L23 of $10,990. So that agrees with their sheet. So all the data is the same. The difference is that I have converted the debt service coverage. They express it as a percentage, and I've converted it to months. Okay, so if you look at how we ended the year, we had 11.2 months in reserve. So, that's a good bit. And in talking with Alan and Jan, legally we're required to have 3 months. 3 months of reserve.
And that's for the debt service account.
Right, this is strictly, this first street is only debt. And so we have 12 months in it. And then you can see, if you look down the sheet on column N, you see how it changes based on Baird's proposition. And then Alan had told me, if we never intend to borrow money again, we're going to run these loans out and not have any more loans, we don't even have to have the 3 months.
Who's Alan?
Alan, Adam, yeah.
Okay.
And, but again, that's the data. And the way this sheet works, the yellows are input fields. You know what I mean? And the far left, I pulled out the tax rate. They had, originally had the same tax rate for every year, but after discussion, Jan brought the last year down to a lower tax rate to flush out the millions of dollars we have in reserve. You know what I mean? And if you look at this now, if you look at column P, and what column P beginning in row, 16, it shows, we really have in excess of the 3 months, we have 4.6 million. We have a lot of millions of dollars in excess reserves in this account. And also, up on top, if you look at the investment pool in red, that tells you what the investment pools with its monies is paying today. And if you follow the Fed, they raised the interest rate another 0.75%. So that's just going up. And in this sheet that Baird uses, they use 0.5. 0.5. So so if you flip the page, that's kind of that data. So basically, I said, hey, I've replicated the form. So I've demonstrated to myself and hopefully you guys that the form is correct. And so I looked at it and I said, hey, I believe we can afford to take $512,000 out of this account, out of reserves that were really not necessary to be there. And so what I've done is I've taken the second page, and you look at the blue, the two blue boxes, I've changed the debt rate, down to 0.16 for this year. And again, we can set this debt rate every year. I mean, there's no restrictions. We can set the debt rate. The catch is whatever we put into this lockbox, it stays in. You can move money from M&O over, but you can't move debt out. The only way you can get debt service down is not to put it in the beginning. And so this takes $500,000 out, and you can see what it does to if you look at column 10 of the second sheet, it basically brings the debt coverage down this year would be 9.4, and you can see how it feathers down. If you look down that column, not far off from where they began, because there's four there's $4 million in excess debt coverage in there past the 3 months. So we really have a lot of money in here. And I don't think we should leave it set when we're looking at really pretty significant increases in property taxes. And also, that's going to get a lot of attention. So that's the second sheet. So my proposal for debt is to drop it to 0.16. We take 500,000 out and we move that to M&O. We move to the next sheet. But if you look at what's laid out here, you really don't see a dramatic effect on risk, right? We still have a lot of coverage. You know, we end the year at 9.4 months. There's plenty of funding in this sheet. And, you know, as we get down and we pay off this debt in, you know, year 9, 2020, 2029 and 2030, we have to drag it down to 0 anyway. So I'm just speeding up that process. We have plenty of coverage. We can always look at it again another year, but that's where that mindset. So that was the first step. So I looked at that and said, okay, we have a 0.16, that's my proposal. And then the next sheet is really Marine's data. And if you kind of look at that sheet and you can kind of take a quick look at the column. So if you look at Marine's data, that's row 10. And it's Marine's 18 September, that's off her budget line. And if you come over there, you know, she's proposing that we raise the debt service line, right? We were spending last year like 450,000, and she's proposing that we raise it to 1.34 million. Okay, so that goes
I
up.
need you to explain a little bit better.
Okay.
on Maureen's spreadsheet, what it is you're talking about.
Okay, so give me some hints. What do you want me to talk about?
This line that you're calling.
Right, so
Maureen's-
what I've done is I've taken
Where is it off?
her budget
Okay,
and, you know, she has, let's come over to, revenue. Let's start with column I. So that's her on, you know, number 10, that's her total revenue, 12,770,000 million.
okay,
And then her total expenses, 12.5 million. And then the SWC fee is 3.5 million and change. And then the total expenses less SWC fee, you know, that what you know is that the cash on hand, right, is less the SWC fee. That's the way the body does it. So that's 9 million. And then what I did was I took that coverage and I divided it by 12 and it says pretty much, you know, a monthly expenses here, less the SWC fee is $750,000 a year. You know what I mean? And then it says total cash available, you know, previous period is 2.9. And then you said total cash available current period. So if you look at those, what Marine is proposing is that we keep 3.8 months on hand as cash reserve. And Jim has talked about 6 months. So, you know, really that's a big dump. If you look above the 3.8 in column P, you mean above that, it says 2.4. So we're closing this year at 2.4. And you guys in the past made a conscious decision to bring that number down. And I don't know discussion was, but you obviously paid for the meters out of cash. You mean? And so if you kind of look at that, that's the line that Marine's budget and, you know, her debt service, not her debt service, her debt service ratio is, you know, 0.1724 and the maintenance ratio is 0.325. That's hers. And it brings out 1.3 million in MT maintenance tax. So that's her line. Above 10 is last year's, and above 12 is some of 2 years ago. And so I have 4 proposals here that I played with. Either the first one, she had a net income of 260K.
Right.
That means a profit. So my first run was I was going to eliminate the profit. You know what I mean? And so I ran a series of numbers, and what that did was I eliminate the profit, and it brought the tax. You know, it brought the new revenue we bring in by applying this tax to 38,000. I mean, we'd have an increase in 38,000 in taxes. And I said, hey, we're really close to the no new revenue number. So, I ran three. I ran David 2 on line 12. And I said, okay, let's put that in there, and we get a negative net income of negative 38,000. And what we do is we collect the same amount of dollars. So if you look at David 3 on line 12, and you look at line 9, and you look at column D, by column D, it'll say we collected last year $7,655,289, and we're going to collect this year with that proposal. We're going to collect $7,655,138. We're going to collect the same dollars, and with that, we reduce our tax rate because we get, we reduce the tax rate to what's on the proposal sheet, which is Marine had it at the maintenance tax at 0.0325, and I have it 0.0253, and it raises it lowers it. And what it does is it takes about 300,000 out of maintenance. Instead of collecting 1.3 million, we're collecting $1 million, basically $1.05 million. So that's the proposal. And what it does is it puts the tax rate generating the same amount of revenue that you would have raised last year. So we equal the no new tax revenue goal. If you look at rows 13 and 14, if you want to get more aggressive, I know Greg likes to be aggressive, and
Greg,
I'm sorry. What that does is, if you want more revenue, more reduction in M&O, you can see column H, and David 3 and David 4 brings it down to 702 and 454. So if you want more reduction, you can have more reduction. But I said, hey, let's take debt service down. We're going to raise maintenance. We raise it $600,000. And we bring the tax rate so we don't generate any more revenue. So that's my 4 statements. So I'll let anybody else, if they have any questions, I'll be glad to ask them.
well, I have a couple of overall comments. First, I'd like to commend the previous board for good stewardship in paying out of cash and not taking new debt on. I think that was great. I also think that, David, you did a masterful job in putting forth a lot of detail into this. And again, kudos to you. My observation, I took a look at this with David and I did my own analysis, and my target came out a little bit lower. Not substantially. It was a 0.178 as opposed to a 0.185. I'm not stuck on that. It's just I looked at it differently. I came at it differently. The 2 things that I guess drove my review of Dave's work, which again is excellent, is that since we have, I guess with the investment pool that's required, we averaged about 2%. I say fully weighted, but I don't know what the mix is, but it's at least 2% based on what these numbers are here, which for this year is about an $80,000 income versus almost 21. And David included in his further detail that I didn't see before, 148 for next year, 124 for the year after that. In his analysis of no new tax rate, or no new property tax revenue, we normally get yings and yangs based on new customers who come in and also usage that varies by, let's just say, the environment. When we have a lot of rain or we have a drought, whatever that case might be, this year we enjoyed an increase and over target. And one of the things that came to mind to consider as possibly part of this budget, or we can postpone it for a few months after we make adjustments and pass it, is have a 1 or 2 phase adjustment back to our customers based on the excess of usage, which would drive even more to the bottom line. So Dave, if you're saying you're at break even right now or close to it, if we do next year what we did this year, we're going to have $800,000 to $1 million more. We can keep it, or we can give a part of it back to our residents because we are representing our constituents. And it's just something to consider. But whether you go with Dave's number or some number in between his and what the water agency said, or my target, which is slightly lower, I think we're doing the right thing for our residents. And I'd like to open up the floor to George and Deidre, who've been here a lot longer than Dave and I, to get your feedback as to how you feel about what his thoughts are and my thoughts are.
One question, is part of your analysis, did you say moving some funds from the debt service reserve into the operating reserve?
So really what you can't take them out.
Okay, that's
You
right.
can't,
Okay,
what I'm doing is I'm taking, like, just like water, I'm dialing the flow in down a little bit, $500,000.
I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I can't take them out. Unless you say I can. No. How lawyers are, they never easy.
Pesky bond covenants.
I mean, at that tax rate, when you plug it in, what is what do you show as the net bottom line for this fiscal year?
Negative 38, 37, but I'm getting 2.9 months average for ending year.
So in
A
our
little
world,
bit less than that 3.4.
okay.
Yeah, again, that assumes the numbers stay constant as it is in this proposal, both proposals, yours and David's. If it in fact does increase, even though we have a flat rate that we're looking at, or a reduced rate, number of customers can increase and are increasing. Will it be a substantial amount? I don't think so. And that's why my number is slightly lower than the proposed rate of David's.
Okay, so when I started, there really wasn't a linear plan for the debt service fund. It varied dramatically every year. And, you know, out here, we're showing essentially a fully funded plan. And originally, it only was fully funded for a couple, 3 years. And so this is the result of several years of work to lay out a plan that is showing, you know, a fully funded debt service plan. And the idea is that, you know, we've only got 7 or 8 years left, and you will have that whole debt paid off.
Hopefully.
And that was the goal, is to have no debt at the end of 2030.
Correct.
So this stuff the same thing.
You will have to raise
Well,
taxes.
you might
You'll
have
have
to.
to
You
raise
have to.
revenue.
You
You've
may have to
moved
do
it
that.
out.
But,
to-
yeah.
You've
But you're
moved
keeping-
the need to raise revenue out into
Right.
2028, 2027.
Yeah, I agree that you will, you may have to unless you change but if you may. unless
And
you
I use
change-
the word revenue versus tax. You'll have to raise revenue to pay off that,
No, you don't. You don't. You don't have to raise any
because
revenue.
you show a shortfall.
No, that's what you have to, when you look at that, let me flip to that page.
And
So
maybe
that-
we
that
need it.
That shortfall, if you look at a column Q, is that what you're?
Right, yeah.
So that's from the Bear proposal to this proposal. So if you look at the excessive coverage, now excessive coverage is 3 months. You're protecting the 3 months. Right? So we are positive with, with this proposal, we end next year, we'll have 3 million. And then it comes down to 2,000, 1,000 in excess of the 3 months. So you're always protecting the 3 months in this new proposal. You may have to change rates, right? But you're always protecting the 3 months. And there comes a point where, we get to year 2028, 29, we're gonna come off a cliff, right? All of a sudden, we're gonna have, $6 or $7 million that we don't have to spend anymore. So to me, if we glide down, getting close to that, then we can deal with it easier later on. And again, if you look at this, you're still maintaining it, 3.2 months coverage in the last month. You're still covering it. And it just brings that down, and we can look at it again next year and see what we can do. But we have a lot of expenses this year because of, a whole bunch of things. And to me, this is a partial walk, meaning we're keeping the same revenue from the taxpayers, and we're reducing our exposure in having too much in reserves. And, to me, it's fairly conservative as it is. But you will have to look at the rates and adjust the rates as you approach the later years. I mean, if you want to maintain the
And
three.
that assumes that there are no changes in maintenance at all,
Well,
which
if
there
you
might be.
look at debt service, that's independent of
Oh,
maintenance.
it is, absolutely, it is.
But if you look at column P, that's excessive coverage. So, column O tells you how much debt service coverage we have plus 3 months. That's plus 3 months. And you can see what we have. And then if you look at the excessive column P, it tells you how much more we have beyond what's required, the 3
For the
months.
3 month
The
number,
3 months.
right?
And you see the last 2 years, we're basically sitting at 3 months coverage, as we end this debt payment. So it really is a fairly conservative plan. And if it meets the requirement, your debt rates do modify, but as you get down there, we can, you can't take it. You can't take it out once it's in, but you can always put more in there if you want. He's right. Any explanations? Oh, you lost your voice.
You always have a voice here.
Okay, good. I'm wondering what Brian and Adam recommend.
I'm trying to think through, I mean, Adam, I think, can speak to coverage and all that. I'm looking at, the revenue on the O and M side. I'm focused on the side right now. Yeah, you were talking about a reduction in revenue of what's 300,000 somewhere.
So if you look on, let me help you out. If you look on those, these two with that. So if you come down here, look over here, so what we have last year, we had 485, 458. And then, this year she proposed 1.3 million, and with this proposal, it takes it down to $1 million. So we're still, 600,000 roughly above where we were this year.
But on what was proposed, so I'm looking at the budget, so the budget's built on what was proposed. Of
That's
one
true.
point three.
What that does, see that little column right here? See that's net income.
Correct.
That's net income. So last year we had a big negative net income,
Correct.
right? So this year she proposed a 261, and really
Correct.
I
That's
take
where
it
I
down
was
to
going.
38,000,
Negative, yeah.
right? And that just gets us to the negative 38,000 negative income. So it comes out of cash.
Correct.
And so when you look at what it does to cash, right, cash reserve, we're at 2.4 right now. We're at 3.8, and this brings it down to 3.4. So it does diminish cash reserve, but, you think about that, for every month, that's $750,000. So you take 3.4 times 750, we have multiple millions of dollars in cash reserve sitting there. So, again, we have a lot of increases. We had a big appraisal change, and really all this does is takes us back to where the appraisals were last year. It draws the same amount of revenue.
And I think right now we're still developing as opposed to developed.
Right.
In this district, so we're not stuck with 3.5 yet, but
Right.
we will be at some point. And so I don't know that we have like a 5 or 10 year MUD specific CIP plan, do we? So that's one thing I think would be helpful for y'all to have before you were getting aggressive on the M&O side. Because, I mean, 46 is a big district. I mean, 2.5 million looks like a lot of money, but if you don't.
Oh, we
know
have the
what
largest
your-
district. You're 100% correct, right?
Without knowing what your 10-year, 5 to 10-year CIP plan is and what you're gonna
Sure.
need to pay for out of cash, I feel like that's a blind spot before, because once you give that up on the operation maintenance tax side, once you give that up, you can't easily go back and recoup that, especially if you're thinking that
What
you're
is it?
under levying on the.
So,
debt
but
service.
honestly, last year, you guys made a conscious decision
We
to-
made the
to
decision
bring it
to,
down.
to go down
Yeah.
to really below minimum.
Well,
We felt that it was below.
Oh, guidance,
Well, let
not
me-
not a required minimum.
let me say this, there's no legal minimum.
Well, let me
Right.
keep
There's
talking.
no legal minimum.
Please.
Go ahead.
There are potentially unexpected expenses that can come along. And when you're talking about being at $2.5 million, we felt that, yeah, we can get by
Mhm.
till next year, which is now, and recover some of that. And one example I've heard about is Mud 60 had some large unexpected expenses year before last. And
For
maybe,
this fiscal year,
maybe that would be a good example to use as, well, how quick $2 million can evaporate.
What is our remaining bonding authority?
Just
Yeah.
over 9 million.
That
in
was-
this fiscal.
Oh, we have bonding authority in this month?
In this
Oh, we do.
$9 million?
That was another question. So I'm trying to think of your different relief valves.
Right,
So-
also you've got 60, which has got a much older infrastructure than we do here on the western part of the
On
woodlands.
the western part, right? And y'all got kind of a blend of.
Well, we have a blend.
Yeah.
It begs the issue of consolidation or change of how we have our muds, but that's a different story. It's not for this meeting. But even with having those two locations in 46, it still skews heavily towards a lower infrastructure cost on most of 46.
Yeah. I think the only point I'm making is we're talking about going negative on the O&M and then you're under levying on the debt service that you're gonna have to make up next year, assuming, of course, we're assuming that there's not increases in appraised values, who knows? Or taxable values, who knows?
Right.
But if you assume that they're static, you're gonna have to move over more of the M&O next year. So you're gonna make that deficit go down more. You're gonna make the deficit higher next year.
It's a possibility, but if we go through the same scenario next year as we went through this year on revenue generation, we were in excess of $500,000 to $600,000 based on actual and budget. So
If you're in the same position, there's no need to move money over to
precisely,
debt because you have in excess of $4 million in excess of the 1 million, 3 months of cash. So we really are well funded,
It's a policy decision by
Yeah,
y'all.
that's
I'm
right.
trying to
No,
think
I understand.
through,
No, it's good
all the
we can do
different
it.
potential blind spots. One is a lack of a 10-year CIP plan. Two is not knowing where your revenue on water and sewer is gonna be. So if you are gonna have to pull more reserves to meet your debt service, if you go down there. And the last thing is not knowing when you're gonna flip from developing to developed. And when that happens, you're gonna be locked in a lot more tightly on your M&O rate
correct.
and byproduct as well. If you're kind of under levy and betting on the come, basically on value or potentially higher water sewer revenues, is that if that doesn't happen and you have to go up on the debt service side, it's a funky way of how the statute was written, and we're having to deal with it in Mud 36. You're forced to call a rollback election if you're a developed district. If you have a cumulative rate increase, debt service and M&O that's above the 3.5% plus your unused increment. However, the result of the election can only be to lower your M&O rate and to get it to the 3.5%. So you can have a situation where you're forced to call an election because your cumulative goes over, and maybe because the debt service.
so the MUD though has the ability to set water and sewer rates. Right?
That's correct. And
So
could-
you
could
have another
increase-
valve there
That's correct.
that if you can't, you need to do it. So what you're telling me, we can raise up to 8%, developed.
If we need to.
undeveloped.
This year.
this year and next year.
Well, every year.
Every year changes, right? And then that's one relief valve. And the next relief valves, I didn't know this, there's $9 million in bond. I don't want to.
We couldn't look at as, unless it's an emergency.
I thought we were zero. And then the next item is, we still have, when we have water rate changes, we can change the rates. We can raise taxes next year if we have to, if something comes up. And we have these reserves. And
Another question for Brian. We haven't locked in the size or the geography of all of the MUDs yet, have we?
I mean, potential annexations.
Right.
For this district, I'm not aware of any potential annexations for MUD 46 at this point.
Okay, because I was under the impression, possibly incorrect, that 46 and 47 had the potential, if they voted to approve it, to annex more land west of here.
I'm not aware of 46. Now, maybe the development company has something that I'm not.
but that would also leave the boundaries of the woodlands in most cases.
Well, in some, it could,
It could,
that
right.
just depends. And we've dealt with that before where you can have an expansion of the River Authority service area and the township boundaries be extended
That's
to
like-
be able to accommodate it.
Okay.
So that can happen. We've done
May
that.
Valley would be an example of something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway, it goes back to policy decision. Obviously, I'm just trying to think through. It is.
It's a lot to assimilate in just a short period of time, right?
It's a more aggressive approach.
Actually, it's not that aggressive. If you look at the detail of what Dave is proposing, we're only talking $700,000 in the scheme of things.
Yeah, that's gonna go back to, staff's recommendation on the number of months of reserve and.
Precisely. And being an optimist, I think that there will be an increase of usage in the coming year. What do I base it on? Don't know. But what I have looked at is how it came about this year, both as a resident and as a MUD director. And we have paid more, a lot more, as an individual resident. If we are in fact representing our constituents and our residents properly, I think this is the right way to go. Whether it's my 1.78 or Dave's 1.85 is irrelevant. The point is we're doing the right thing for our constituents, and that to me is primary of what our objectives are here.
Well,
I don't,
that's the other thing.
if I can maybe
Yeah.
hear, I don't want to define it as right and wrong. Like when isn't
Okay.
right and when isn't wrong.
I stand corrected. It's not a right or wrong. It's
So
a
it's-
different path to
it's a
go follow.
philosophy of how you want to look at it, I think. So my question would be, how much would this save the average taxpayer on my tax bill? Because if you go to raising water and sewer rates, I see that every month. So if mine goes from $100 to $200 every month, because we have to raise those rates, I'm going to see that and I'm going to be in here yelling and screaming. But if you moving this down slightly a little bit, will only mean that I don't pay $50 a year extra. I'm going to say, okay, they took that into consideration versus raising my water sewer rates $100 a month.
What's the number of hookups we've got here? 8,000 even?
The problem with averages.
Yeah.
Averages is mean, it doesn't.
No, I get that,
it doesn't mean a
but
lot.
No, it doesn't. It's $75 is how, if you look at it, it's 600,000 by 8 divided by 8,000. It's
I mean,
it's not a lot, but at the same point, our constituents complaining when they get a $20 or $40 increase based on usage. So this, I think, is directionally correct.
there's no doubt that people are gonna notice their water bills going up.
Correct.
This
That's
year.
going to happen.
They're gonna notice it. And at least we can say we didn't increase the tax rate.
I'm saying you made a statement of, well, we can always raise revenue by raising our water sewer rates.
We can if we have, I mean, you have options. But
Yeah, but I'm
we have
saying
plenty
is,
of,
we're all residents, right? We're all residents. So if I saw you raising it, like, because you have to make back more money, that would make me more upset. So I'm just saying, like, that's my side of it. Is that I'd be like, oh, great, you guys are giving me a tax rate. And then the other thing would be like next year with the board, because it's gonna be the same board, because we don't have an election. Would y'all be willing to raise the tax rates next year? Or would we come back and say, we don't want to raise the rates? And then my final question, I'm just asking
Well, no,
questions.
I'm going to ask the question backwards, and not to you, but to our board members who are here. If we anticipate increased taxes year over year for the next 5 years, at least we can say this year, we put a stake in the ground and said that we've, in light of all of the things going on in this country right now with increased interest rates, with inflation and the like, we put a stake in the ground and have only raised it point to 0.18 or to 0.178. And I think that's a positive thing. Next year, who knows? It could get worse, the economy in America. A lot of things can happen. But I think in context of what we're doing and the reserves that we've got and the small amount of money that we're adjusting the budget for, that it's, I think, a good path for this board to promote a conservative approach to dealing with the financials.
In my mind, I'm thinking conservative means self-discipline. And you recognize here are the costs that we have coming to us, and we will plan for those costs, and we're looking out at the future, and we're not really worried about what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 months. We're looking forward. And so I looked at this small increase in revenue or excess income as really a small increment in trying to be able to plan for the future. And what we're seeing is every 6 months or so, somebody comes in with this neat new project that, gee, we got to do it. And whether it's repair a dam or other infrastructure that needs,
Like for drainage,
you know,
downstream of us.
there seem like there's always something new coming in. And so, and these aren't just, well, casual, nice to do, you know, we're going to paint the house blue today. But I'm thinking that what you're doing is trying to have a real short-term vision of we're going to achieve a tax cut. And we need to be looking forward. And we've got a plan out there for 8 years where we're going to have a real significant tax cut in 8 years. I mean, we won't have any debt service requirement.
Correct.
I didn't just speak to George for saying, like y'all weren't on the board, but there was a drainage project that we didn't even think we would be able to do or help pay for because we didn't have the
Well,
money.
The best time to repair the roof is when it's not raining, okay? It's not raining right now. We also have acknowledged the fact that we have, if a crisis occurs, okay, and we look at a problem or a project that's presented to us next year.
Yeah, I'm thinking of its lack of self-discipline to push out till next year. Let's wait till next, you know, if there's a problem that comes up, well, we'll worry about it when it
I'm
comes
not
up.
advocating that. What I'm saying is that we have a fallback, worst case scenario. We've got $9 million as a potential bond addition, a portion of it, if it's a critical project, which Deidre talked about, which you're verbalizing, and we don't have the reserves. But even if we went with the proposed budget from the water agency and a problem occurs, that $600,000 is not going to really make much of a dent in it. I don't think.
Well, we're talking, where are we getting 600,000?
reserves.
Yeah, I'm not counting that. I'm saying that that's kind of fixed.
For emergencies.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that's fixed. Okay, we have to keep a reserve similar to that.
I mean, Jim feels comfortable keeping 6 months.
Where?
in your budget.
Oh, okay, but that's a different
I
budget.
know,
Woodlands Water Agency, we don't have the risk that you have.
Yeah.
And I just emphasize, in the mud world, 6 to 9 months is typical. I have never seen a mud that stuck with that philosophy that ran into a financial
Okay, well, we're,
burden.
but-
But I have
we're gonna-
seen some
yeah.
that didn't follow that really
Yeah.
struggled.
I defer to your experience, absolutely, without question.
But it is a board decision.
decision,
It is a board policy decision.
And I'll just say from the debt side, which is what we focus on behalf of the district, what we like to show is either a flat debt service tax rate or descending.
Mhm.
So, if you look at David's spreadsheet, I don't have the luxury of taking into account appreciation. I have to take a snapshot in time of what the taxable value is currently. So what our proposal was showing is the drawdown over time and not assuming any increase, because we all know there most likely will be appreciation.
Of course.
Next year's, but, you're showing a tax rate increase from 16 cents on the debt side to almost 18 cents in the future. Now it is 7 years out, but, ultimately it's your decision, but from our standpoint, when we present it, we're taking into account what's taxable on the ground now and then drawing down that reserve over time.
Correct.
So,
But you said the requirement is 3 months. And we have
yes,
almost 12 right now.
correct.
So
Yeah, I don't think
sort
it's,
of puzzled.
I don't think it's deemed excess until it's over 100% in the eyes of the IRS. And so over time, the reason it's as high as it is over time, and George and Deidre can speak to that, over time as we've done refundings, which were killed ultimately this year, but the refundings where you're actually saving dollars is what's causing that balance to go up and up and up. And, the years that we can't capture through the refunding is why the tax rate is what it is and why the coverage is at the 93% right now and drawing down over time.
So when you say refunding, you mean you have a higher interest rate note in refunding? Well, obviously, with what's happening today, I doubt there's much refunding
Correct.
going on in
Yes.
the near future, at least next 6-7 years. So,
Correct, but I'm
I
saying
think
that's what caused the
Right.
balance to go up.
right, but it seems like, I read today that 2 years ago hit 4%.
And 7 years from now, we will be in a older infrastructure scenario. And we would have to look towards the water agency and their staff just to over that 7 years to say, here are the necessities that we need this year. And that would happen whether we keep the $600,000 or $700,000 in the budget or not. We're still going to have to examine those projects and determine what we have to do. I believe this is a modest adjustment, and it really doesn't approach anything on the debt service side. In fact, we don't even take into account, well, I'm not even go there. Forget about what happens in the future. We're talking coulda, woulda, shoulda. Don't know. I think if we deal with the next 2 years, that's probably more practical because that's really what we're going to have to deal with. And I think this is a very conservative and George, your comment about doing the correct thing for our constituents, I think is well funded. We have to be diligent in that.
My bottom line is I'm not comfortable cutting the M&O reserves.
Okay.
I'm just not comfortable cutting it beyond what Maureen's already proposed.
Okay. How do you feel?
We want to vote? Is the debate over? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think the debate's over. I'm just,
Okay.
also just trying, y'all did a lot of work on this. But we've also seen what's happened that y'all probably haven't seen. And we just don't want to, I don't want to say we because I can't be for anybody else. I don't want to paint myself in a corner. And so I kind of want to ask you both the question of, so that we could look at the debt service separately from the maintenance, right?
Sure.
Like in our head, in my head.
Sure.
And I'm just having you walk me through it so that I understand. So like the debt service, you're saying we can not put money in there because we've got 12 months in reserve, right? We've got 12 months of reserve. So we're not going to put as much money in there so we can lower the tax rate on the debt service.
We can lower the tax rate industrial by basically slowing the flow into the pot that we
Correct.
can't touch by $500,000.
Okay.
So we take the faucet and we tighten it up a little bit and less dollars flow in this year.
So if we did that, how much would we have in reserve? Would it still be the 12
We
months?
would have, I'll tell you in a minute.
It's on here.
So we look at the following year. And I can talk two numbers, I think it's relevant.
Go ahead.
So, we talk about 3 months a lot, so I've kind of locked that in. So, if you look at column O and you look at what's in there now, it begins at 9.9 million with the 3 months reserve. And then if you look at, it drops the following year
You
line.
have to tell me like a column in a row.
Okay, so I'm looking at column O, and you can kind of start in row 46.
Okay.
Okay, that's 2023. Okay, and so if you look at the reserve plus 3 months, right, we drop it, it comes to 9.987 after we take the 500 out. So the total amount really isn't changing, right? And all we're doing is drawing down the excessive amount, so it.
So you're just trying to draw it down to the 3 months gradually over the
Well,
year.
I actually, well, I'll be honest with you, I get the 3 months, the last year, Right, if you look at column N, I mean, right now we're at 11.2. And when you finish, you're at 3.2. If you look at what they propose, Baird proposes, you end at 3.7. You end at 3.7 instead of 3.2. And so right now you have it at 11, it goes to 10. I have it going to 9.4 and I kind of glide it down. And I'm just in essence and I've only proposed taking money out this year, that's it.
Mhm.
You mean? And it takes us, the SX coverage comes down.
Down a penny.
The rate from
Debt, just debt.
debt is, roughly a penny. Yeah, roughly a penny, 1.6, from what Green or the Baird proposed was 1.724. So we come a penny down, that's the result of that is we keep less reserves, but we're still well above.
Yes.
What-
And what is your recommendation, 3 months, or is it?
So the TCEQ rule is 25% coverage of your following year's debt service if you're submitting an application. So the idea being you maintain the minimum of 25% coverage so that in the event there's some sort of emergency or you need to go to get authorization to sell debt, you have that ability.
And we can still sell 9 million in bonds.
You have 9.1 million in remaining authorization.
Okay. So if we sell those bonds, then can we raise our debt service rate then? Like that
Yes.
would be-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you may subject yourself, if you're considered a developed district at that point, you may have to call an election because cumulative rate is over 3.5, although the result of the election could not impact your debt service rate, which is the stupidity of the law.
Right.
Does anybody on staff object to that penny decrease
In the debt service,
in the debt service?
Yeah, I mean,
have to
I
defer
guess
to Adam and
you just have to keep in mind that, in that scenario, like I said, assuming no inflation, assuming just a flat tax rate, it's going from 16 cents to 16.7 the next year. So next year, you will either have to move a little over a half a penny from M&O to cover that shortfall if you have the
If it is a
shortfall.
shortfall.
Right. Otherwise, you have to come up with the money somehow. You have the obligation on the debt side to pay that outstanding principal and interest. So,
From an oversight perspective, that's what the board does. From an operational
Correct.
perspective, that's what the water agency does.
correct.
I feel comfortable with the water agency. I think they do a good job.
George, do you
What's
have
the
any?
value of that 16 to 16.7? What is that 0.007 worth
Well,
in terms of revenue?
so you come over here,
I'm saying like, what's the how much different amount of revenues they're generating? Trying to figure out what we're even talking about.
okay, let's see if I have that. So
It's about
basically,
292,000, right?
292,000.
Right.
For 0.007.
Yes, based on the 4.1 billion. Certified.
Sure. So that's really what you are talking about. Are are you comfortable taking on the debt service side, a $200,000 risk that you're not going to get 200,000, enough appreciation to make that up, water sewer revenue, or that you have to take that from next year's M&O rate? Or are you comfortable with that calculated risk?
I'm comfortable with it, Dave. Obviously, I built the table, so I'm comfortable with it.
I'm thinking you're hoping that there is no recession next year.
Well, I
You know, where property values
I
decline.
mean,
Property values decline.
what's that?
I'm hoping they decline.
Yeah, well, it can go both ways, but so I guess I'm saying I don't have a crystal ball, but I know that we're sitting on, we get done. Instead of sitting on, 10 months of reserves at the end of the year, we're sitting on 9.4. So it's not like, this is what I call a radical proposal. The radical proposal would be to take out the $4 billion this year, right? I'm saying, let's inch it forward, right? Let's move it forward and take some of the money out, but not do it in the, my hair's on fire type scenario.
George, do you have any questions or anything?
I guess if I talk about M&O,
No,
we
let's do
started,
debt. Let's do
I
that.
want to talk about M&O.
Okay. Okay, then, well, please do.
Have you finished on debt, Deidre?
I'm okay with the debt.
Okay, then let's go to M and O.
So on M&O, when I started out, there was $8 million in the reserve, something like $8 million. And in my heart, I felt like that was what you call excessive. And so we've used that money to finance different capital projects and avoid borrowing money. We've also, in 2017, we had a 20% homestead exemption. So we've made a real significant drop in the amount of dollars that we tax. So in my heart, I'm feeling like I don't want to cut the M&O budget below this 3.25 cents per hundred that has been proposed. I'm not sure how I feel about the debt service. We also had a significant debt service reserve, and that allowed us to pay off some bonds early. We're getting to the point where early is getting to be shorter and shorter time frame. It was 10 or 15 years. Now it's down to less than 8.
Yeah.
So there's less potential for benefit out there in 2028.
And when you were doing that, interest rates were coming down to zero. And now they're going the
I
other way.
want to avoid spending anything on interest.
No, I know, but I'm just saying the incentive.
That just because we got $9 million of bonds we can issue, I'm reluctant to
Yeah.
plan on using that.
We shouldn't plan on using it. It's a safety net.
So,
My proposal, if I was going to make a motion, try to move forward, is I would motion that we keep the maintenance tax rate at 3.25. I'm not making a motion on the debt service rate.
so how do we want to do this? Well,
So-
you voted individually?
So right now we've got, I think we're talking about the budget right now. And so the budget is built on the tax rate that George is referring to. So I guess what we would do is consider a motion for approval of the budget as drafted or as revised to reflect a particular alternative maintenance tax rate. And then that would take care of the maintenance piece. And then we'll go to the hearing and of the rest of the tax rate.
So say that again, a little slower.
We need a motion to approve the operating budget either with the rate presented for M and O, which is the 0.0325, or to approve the budget revised with whatever the alternative maintenance tax rate would be.
So I could make a motion
Correct.
to adopt for the maintenance only, adopt the rate that I proposed on this document here.
So you're making a motion to approve the budget.
The 0.025340. And that's the M and O rate only.
Okay. So that's to approve the budget revised to reflect
That rate.
that rate.
So you're making a motion, I'll second it.
And I call for division,
What rate did you propose?
this rate right here.
2534. Let's see what we did.
That's for a rate in the budget, and that's the revised rate. And that takes the M and O collection down from, again, it's 1.0 down to 1 million, approximately 300,000 less.
Right.
And you've got a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Well, I'd like to do a call for the division, which means I'd like to record the vote.
All votes are recorded.
Well, what I mean is in the minutes. By name.
Okay. All in favor of David's proposal? All opposed?
That's the thing. Okay.
Oh, I don't know where you go from there. You know, whether there's some way to get a compromise.
I'll do it in theory. I'm just trying to figure it out. And like sitting right now and talking about it and figuring it out makes it very hard for me to decrease it right now. That's why I voted no. It's not like
That's a fair comment.
Yeah.
Let me ask the question differently. If you had more time to study this information.
Yeah.
Would you be able to come back? If we put it in the minutes that we're going to have a special meeting in, call it 7 days, would that give you sufficient time to do your evaluation and ask your questions of either David, preferably David, or myself?
Well, she can't really ask me questions. Not outside the
I
room.
can't either one.
Well,
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Okay,
We want
well,
to discuss things.
you can do your analysis and we can get together in a week and then we can discuss it one more time, or we can put it off a month.
We have to set the tax rate, right?
Yeah, the current budget ends at the end of this month, so we really need to have it adopted. Now, you can always amend your budget.
Understood.
You could defer on your tax rate. You could defer on the adoption of tax rate. So if we have an issue obtaining a quorum, we could adopt a budget that would be subject to revision next month if the tax rate's different. It's up to y'all, or we try to get a quorum for the budget next week.
Clarification just from Brian, is it prohibited, is Deidre prohibited from contacting David and asking him
Yeah.
questions about the
One-on-one,
spreadsheet?
no, but if that expands to more than two people, then we have one.
So let me add to this, I'm learning about this, this walking meetings. So I've talked to Fred about an earlier version of this. Can I freely talk to Deidre?
Not, and you can talk to Deidre out, because there's now information shared at this meeting. You can talk to her about
This
this, but
document.
then you cannot go talk to Fred
Fred again.
about those conversations.
Okay, okay.
Triangulate, basically. that you can.
My
I'm prepared to
preference
get out of the
my
conversation.
preference is I don't like to talk to really anybody outside of one meeting.
That's better safe than sorry. I'm just telling you, if you're asking me what the legal answer is, that's what
That's
it
my
is.
preference.
Oh, would you like more time?
I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know what we've got to do today. Like I thought we had to set the rates and the budgets today. I don't have any opposition to these budgets. And honestly, I look to staff that gives us this for their recommendation.
Of course.
Yeah, and so if they're recommending this, the rate that they recommended, I think that it would be very hard for me to get past that. If that's their recommendation.
What to do? This is your water agency. Is what that's being presented here, does that harm the operations of the water agency?
I will phrase my answer a little differently.
Okay,
We support maintaining a maintenance and operation budget that gets you some towards a 6 months to 12 months reserve. The budget that we presented to you is going in the right direction, going in that direction. I will say, I think the budget that has been offered is a substantial decrease in that number. So it hinders getting to where we would like for you to be. Now, that's our philosophy. It's served us well with my districts, but if you want to deviate from that, it's certainly your prerogative and
right, we understand it, but your objective in making that statement is that you want to build the reserve.
that's right.
Okay, so really what we're talking about is not an operational decision. You're still going to be able to function with the same number of people doing the same projects that are forecasted here
Yep.
with no decrease in quality of service. All we're saying is, do we want a 3-month reserve or a 6-month to 12-month reserve? That hopefully should
If
answer.
that's my philosophy, I would want a 6 to 9 as recommended by staff,
Okay,
as I've seen in other MUDs, as I've seen throughout my career of having that in a reserve. So what would your numbers change if I'm saying I would like us to work towards a 6 to 9 months, not 12, 6 to 9, and we can be at the 6 if 6 is okay. Would your numbers change? Would it change slightly? Like, would it come down? But maybe not as much.
So I guess so you want a goal of
Yeah.
really returning the budget. You know, it used to be, I'm just going by the thing, you go back to 17, 18, and you guys were at 12.7 months reserve. You guys were at that point at that time. And then it dropped to, 18, 19 was 13.2. And then you guys dropped it from 19 to 20, you dropped it to 10.5. And then
So
this
the
past
thing is
year.
that it was dropped before I.
Okay, well, I'm just saying,
And-
the guys is meaning the previous people who occupied these chairs,
And I was part of that.
that,
And I felt like last year, we really went a little farther than we should have.
Yeah.
And you're seeking to go farther.
no, actually, I'm actually raising it.
I don't
I mean, you
think
went
that's
from
what I see.
8.6 and then you dropped it to 2.2. And I'm raising it to 3.4.
I guess I have a question for you. You are advocating also reducing the debt service
I am.
rate. And when you went through your spreadsheet, you talked in terms of move dollars to M&O. But I don't see that you've actually done that. No.
Well, I mean, in essence, you got to realize the M&O, right, started at 450. Right, we spent 450K last year. We raised 450K roughly in M&O dollars last year. So when I say I moved, in essence, I mean,
What I'm trying to,
Maureen moved it, increased by just increasing the tax rate, or kept more of the taxes that were generated by the
what I'm
inflation.
trying to propose is keep the M&O rate as staff has recommended and cut your debt service tax.
Yeah, I was doing the numbers on that because that's what I was kind of thinking where it seems like we're starting to get around to. So the M and O tax reduction is 0.0 proposed, is 0.00716.
I said 0.007, 007.
Yeah, and debt service is 0.0, proposed reduction is 0.01240. You add those together, total reduction of 0.01956. If you go with the debt service portion, which is about double the proposed reduction in the maintenance tax, that's basically a 63.4% of what you're proposing to be reduced. If y'all could agree to kind of split the baby, I guess, and say we'll go down on debt service but keep maintenance tax, it would be 63.4% of what you proposed on the overall reduction.
So say that again, slower.
If we try to come to a compromise, you proposed your overall number is 100% of what you would like to see the reduction be. If the compromise position is to go down to what you've proposed on debt service, but keep the M and O as what staff recommended, that would be achieving 63.4% of the reduction you saw in the proposal.
The catch is, if you take it, I don't know what the number would be. Well, okay. I see what you're saying.
I'm trying to figure out a way, if there's a way, a path through it to compromise through it.
Well, earlier I mentioned that given the excess collections this year, if that continues next year, we should consider a 1 or 2 phase adjustment back to our consumers, our residents. If we go with all what the announced M&O rate is, which would satisfy Deidre, don't know if it would satisfy George.
And
Would we-
announced is what was proposed by Adam, right?
Right, you're right. It's what he wrote here as announced. Okay, that's the line items announced versus proposed, which is what's in front of you. Okay. If you would also agree concurrently that if our collections increase beyond the forecasted rate, that we give back and lower the rate later this year. I can see that.
So I guess my comment would be, if we were sitting here in a normal environment, you know what I mean, like we were the last few years, rates really didn't go anywhere. So what we really we're talking here is, you know, the proposal that Maureen made is a tax increase. We're increasing the taxes on the residents to generate more income. It's just that we're able to hide it through the increased evaluation. So I'm just
Resident
proposing-
only sees the bottom line total tax.
Well, I
And
guess,
so if we.
I mean, if we want to manipulate the fact that they may not be informed, but I think they can become informed. You know, they start seeing these bills come in, they may get a lot more excited. And I think, and I guess what we're really discussing here, I'm proposing to take the tax back to what it was last year. Basically, the net effect, the rate goes down, but we raised the same amount of money that we raised last year. And, you know, with this inflation, we're trying to sneak a tax increase.
But again, it's solely for reserve. It's not going to affect the operational efficiency, the efficacy of the water agency.
All we're doing is, managing reserves.
Okay.
We have ample reserves.
I told you that my goal is to get to 6 to 9 month reserve, not because of operation, but because that's what's recommended. Would that change the rated recommendation that you?
If you ask me, do I believe in having 9-month reserves? I'm not going to support that right now. I don't see a need for that. I mean, if you look at what we have going on, the way we're structured, the river authority, takes care of a big hunk.
And I would agree, the mud this size, 6 months, in my opinion, is probably your minimum, a realistic minimum, but 9 months might be more than needed for this mud. But in the industry, 6 to 12, depending on the size and the age of the mud. We have used that benchmark for many, many years. It's the standard, I think, in the mud world.
Okay, we've got 15 minutes left. And the question I got is there anything else on the agenda we need to do?
Critical items are budget and tax rate. I think everything else is
About number 18.
18. That's not necessary. If you're asking critical, that's not critical.
Okay.
I don't know if this helps, but I just crunched the numbers like Brian was saying, if based on Deidre's recommendation to follow that budget, and then assuming David's 16 cents, what you're talking about is based on the average homestead, a $13.49 increase or 1.43% increase in the average tax bill year over year.
How much did you say?
1.43% or $13.49.
Is significant than the inflation rate.
So if you take the appraisal change, right? So if we adopt, the appraisal change in this district went up 13.2%. Okay, 13.2%. And, we're basically, returning 2.3% of that. We're keeping the rest. We're keeping the rest. And, this proposal, gets us to 11.63. Now, some of these, how these numbers all jump around, I'm just going by this sheet. And if you look at the rate change, we're basically, again, I'll say we're not, with this proposal, we're not increasing. We're getting the same amount of money we got last year, period.
And your
Yeah.
dollars are worth less now.
I don't think we can solve the economy problems
No, we
and
can't solve it.
inflation rate here.
So
My real question,
18 months.
is how to run the meeting. Is, do we want to continue this on in a separate meeting next week? Potentially have another member present, or do we want to try to resolve it today? And I'm really sensing,
For the next 12, 13 minutes, I'd like to resolve it today if humanly possible. If not, then we have no choice in order to do what is proper for our constituents.
and what I'm picturing would, if I was going to make a proposal or find a proposal I'd accept, it would be to take David's proposed debt service rate and Maureen's M&O rate. Okay, I'll give you credit.
I would propose having that,
Half.
as in cut the difference between the 2.5 and the 3.2. That's 3.5 difference because it's a 0.007 delta between those two numbers.
So I don't
I don't
follow.
really follow that either.
Okay, well, try it again. No, it's really simple. You've got the difference between the announced and proposed at 0.007. Okay,
In which column are you?
the far one, M&O tax rate,
The difference is.
0.007. You subtract the proposed from the top, which is the announced. That comes out of 0.007 plus or minus a little bit, okay? What I'm suggesting in order to move this forward is building on what you said, George. Let's split the difference between the 2.53 and the 3.25, which is 0.0035 that you would add to the 2.534. And that would give us both what we want, more money for reserves and
Would you do the same for the debt service?
not at all.
Well, that's no compromise. I mean, that's not my idea of way to compromise.
Well, we already agreed that the debt service was fine. You just said that.
I'm going to stick with, I would like to see the M&O tax rate stay the same.
Okay, that's fair.
Were y'all running the numbers of the split? And what does that look like?
What he just said, just
Yeah,
split the
like
difference,
this.
it's still a negative $30,000 net loss.
If y'all go to 3 cents, which, that's gonna still, I'm just eyeballing it, don't let the lawyer do your math. But that would, I've got to eyeball it and say that's gonna leave you with a positive. Yeah, but you're gonna be now you're at 76% of the reduction that was proposed. I mean, you're going from 63.4% if you literally split the baby between what was proposed on M&O versus what was, whatever the word is, announced on M&O versus what's proposed on debt service. If you go down another quarter, you go 3 even, now you're at 76% of what was proposed.
Okay. So we could support that as a compromise, 3 cents.
Let me,
That's a 0.11% increase in tax bill or $1,
$1, that sounds.
$1.
so we're talking about tax setting and so we're keeping the debt at 0.16.
Going to point.
What is it build the reserve to, Maureen?
Total tax rate of
19 cents.
ending at 3.1 months.
Okay, so directionally, we're moving in the right direction.
That's correct. That's my point.
Tax rate 0.19.
Whether you split it in half, okay, or reduce it to 30% is irrelevant to me. Okay, what I'm looking for is to do what our obligations are to our constituents, which is to provide oversight and guidance. We've already established that regardless which selection we use, it's not going to affect the operations or efficacy of the water agency. So really what we're only talking about is what type of inroads do we want to make to build up the reserves from where it is now to over 3 months or towards 6 months. I would say, I would certainly agree to that as long as we had a provision as part of this, that if we're running increased revenue, that we do set a point in time, whether it's 6 months from today or whenever the year ends, to that point, if we're running over, that we decide to give a portion of it back as a refund to our residents. That's all, that to me would make sense. I'm sorry?
We don't have a mechanism for that.
We might have a mechanism, but
How about if we say we'll look at it, in 6-9 months?
I think that we should always look at that.
Well, in 10 months, we'll be at this process again, just remember that.
right.
So, we'll be at it again in 10 months, so.
And you really won't know what the drought situation will be for next year until, July, August. That's where you'll start to see the
I don't mind
extra
having-
funds coming in.
Absolutely.
I don't mind like having these financial discussions throughout the year, so that we have a better understanding where everybody's viewpoint.
Wonderful thought.
So
Wonderful thought.
I'll make a counter. Okay, Fred, make a counter. Just to move us on. So if we, instead of 0.3, we do 0.29, and that brings up the M&O up, it gives you a positive net income of 112, down from 261. I feel like I'm in China.
Still going in the right direction from our perspective, is that number. Not in the path
But
that
the
we
debt
would
service remains the same.
hope, but still going in the right direction.
But he doesn't vote, so, but compromise.
You said the debt service remains the same as.
So what I'm saying is the debt service remains at 0.16, we take a $500,000 out. But Maureen's proposal was to basically create I'm gonna call it net income, a net income of 261, and I'm proposing, instead of being negative 39, I'm proposing positive 112. And that puts the maintenance tax rate at 0.029. And the debt service, in at a 0.16. And so,
Y'all were saying 0.03.
But we had, your budget was built around 0.032.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is even with a 0.29, you still have a positive bottom line which helps you get your reserve going back in the right direction.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
I hear a motion. I'll make the motion to adjust the tax rate, the debt service at 0.16 and the M&O tax rate to 0.029.
second.
So hang on a second, sorry. We're we're kind of jumping ahead. So right now, we're talking about the budget.
Okay, budget.
Right, we can't consider a motion on the tax rate until we conduct a public hearing.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I said it incorrect, but what I'm suggesting is that between the announced and proposed, we've come up with a direction of 0.16 and 0.029.
So your motion at this point on item number 12 is to approve the operating budget revised to reflect a 0.29 maintenance tax.
That is correct. And for the,
We stop
Yeah,
there.
we gotta stop there.
We gotta stop there.
okay,
Got a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Now, one question, Brian, we're setting a tax rate now.
No,
We're setting,
we're adopting the budget now.
Okay,
Then we'll
okay.
conduct the public hearing.
okay, so we're gonna, the motion is to accept a tax rate or basis for the budget of 0.029.
To approve this budget revised to reflect revenue generated with a 0.029 maintenance tax.
Okay, Shelley, you got that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Now, I know we're short, very short on time. If you don't mind, George, I was kind of
Go for it.
go forward here. So under 13, we need to conduct a public hearing. So we need to adjourn our regular meeting and open the public hearing for any comments regarding the proposed tax rates. We talked about before, it's a two-step process. Notice of the district's intent to levy a tax rate not to exceed the 0.20490 was published in the Courier. So we'll consider any comments from the public at this time. If there are no comments from the public,
Here,
then you can close the public hearing.
okay, public hearing is now closed.
Okay, now we can move to item number 14, consider enacting the levy of the tax rate. We need a motion to approve a proposed debt service and maintenance tax rate. And it would be both tax rates. That's the motion.
that's the one I said before.
Repeat it.
Okay, so I propose that the debt service tax rate be 0.16 and the M and O tax rate be 0.029.
For a total of,
We got to do the math now. I defer to my expert, Mr. Yates.
180.
Yes.
180.
do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, good. We stopped the meeting for later next week.
Yeah.
Thanks, George.
You got
Thanks, Steve.
It's fair.
One last item, 15, we need to approve an amended district information form that gets recorded in the property. But it will reflect your revised tax rate or your new tax rate for 2022. We have a motion to approve the district information form to reflect the 0.189 2022 tax rate.
Make a motion to do exactly what you said.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay, next, are we done?
We will defer any other items for next month's agenda.
And Shelley, can you pick up the items that weren't covered today in next month's agenda? And also get an update on the Spindle Tree Basin.
We should have some numbers from Chris Nunez by this.
Who's Chris Newman?
He's, used to be Parks and Recreation head, and now he's chief operating officer with the township.
Township.
Yeah.
So these numbers are
We-
coming from him.
That's right. We had
They're gonna
a
spend.
Zoom meeting. He agreed to provide some.
Okay, great.
Estimated cost.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see that.
I need a CDPs and a secretary's signature on the order levy. I've marked it out with.
Then we can talk about moving the meeting. We're gonna
We're gonna need to leave here in a second.
leave a second, so we're gonna address that next month.
Can I carry this out to the hall
Yes,
to sign?
we need three directors to sign the district information form.
Y'all sign it. Give me the one I can sign.
You've actually been really good on time.
What?
I've actually been really good on.
We haven't done everything on the agenda though.
So,
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.